Chapter 14 to 15. Once Itachi finished accounting the details of his team's mission, he stood quietly in his place, awaiting further orders from the Hokage. And you're certain you were told that it was the Tsuchikage who had authorized an attack on your unit? Minato asked impassively, to get the facts straight. Based on the details provided by Itachi, it certainly added further backbone to the information he received from his sensei. His face portrayed the disbelief as even he hadn't expected Anoki to make a move against Konoha so soon. Similar thoughts were racing through the minds of Shikaku as well as Tsunade. Minato, we have to start building medical outpost or assign a medical ninja at all of our patrol outposts near the borders of Hai no Kuni. Considering the stunt which Anoki pulled, I wouldn't be surprised if he has more of his shinobi scouting our borders which we don't already know of. And if fighting does ensue on the borders, a medical ninja or a team will be helpful in saving the lives. Tsunade advised wisely. The dreadful memories from the Second and Third Shinobi World Wars were still fresh in her mind. Had Konoha accepted her suggestion to form a medical unit in those times, maybe her brother, Nawaki and lover, Dan could still be alive. Tsunade sighed as she realized that there's point in bringing those memories up at this point. Minato glanced towards the slug Sannin and nodded his head approvingly. He understood what the woman meant and felt. He had heard from his sensei about the loss Tsunade had gone through. You don't need to worry, Tsunade-sama. I will let you choose which personnel would be best suited to send to the borders. Although, sending a team to each outpost would be difficult right now. I believe, one medical ninja per outpost seems more plausible currently. We can't send inexperienced shinobi to the front lines so soon. Minato replied, easing Tsunade's worries. A few minutes later, both Itachi and Tsunade left the Hokage's office to get back to their work. Minato glanced towards Shikaku who had been awfully quiet since the arrival of Itachi. What's your opinion, Shikaku? Minato asked curiously. I assume, you came to the same conclusion, asked the Nara clan head calmly. Making a single hand seal, Minato activated the privacy seals in the room. Hi. Even though I'm certain that Itachi isn't telling us false news, it's a bit hard to believe that Anoki took such a direct approach, all by himself. If he is already amassing his shinobi near the borders of Takigakure, Kiba no Kuni and Kyusugakure, it doesn't do him any good to attack a single Konoha Umbu team in the land of birds. Moreover, Umbu missions are strictly confidential and if Anoki had knowledge of such information, there is only one thing I can assume. We have a... Minato voiced his thoughts. We have a traitor or a spy among our ranks. Shikaku concluded. Minato gave a slight nod as he too had the same thought in his mind. I have a feeling that Danzo is colluding with the Tsuchikage to bring down Konoha. It's not beneath him to do so. When Sarutobi-sama disbanded the route, he also made Danzo hand over the route shinobi under his command. At least, that's what Danzo made him believe. Those shinobi were then reinstated into the regular Umbu forces. And there's no telling how many of them are still secretly working for Danzo. Minato stated as he walked behind his chair and towards the window. As he looked over the village, he had a bad feeling building up within himself. He knew there was a storm coming and Konoha could very fall, if they are not well prepared. Despite having several powerful shinobi in their village, if caught off guard, there's no telling what could happen. Then the possibility of Danzo working with Orochimaru is also very plausible. Considering how both Orochimaru and Danzo fled the village on accounts of treason, it's not very fetched. Shikaku stated. I was thinking along the same lines. But, there are too many factors in play right now. Danzo was an elder in the village and a veteran shinobi who had access to several highly classified information. He knows the village in and out. Whereas Orochimaru, despite the type of shinobi he's become, is very resourceful and tactful. If there is a scenario where the two are working together, we need to start looking for Orochimaru soon. I'm certain we'll find some sort of connection between the two. Minato explained. Shikaku nodded after listening to the Hokage's sound judgment. How do you wish to proceed? Shikaku questioned with seriousness etched on his scarred face. Those who didn't know the man personally may see it as rather odd for Shikaku have such urgency in his behavior. There may not be an imminent threat to Konoha as such, but given the time the possibility for a war between the Earth and Fire Nation seemed more plausible if the events unfolded the way they have been. And both Minato and Shikaku understood that clearly. Shikaku, I want you, Yamato and Ibiki to personally lead the investigation to search for the spy or traitor within the Umbu division. Word of this matter must not reach to anyone else. While I won't be taking any militaristic measures against Anoki right now, we can't let his actions go unpunished. In the upcoming Jounin meeting, I will make it clear to our shinobi to kill any Iwagakure shinobi on sight, if they are found trespassing on Hai no Kuni's land. I will also ask Jiraiya-sensei to gather more intel regarding Iwagakure's movements around Takigakure, Kyusugakure, and Kiba no Kuni. Other than that, we'll just have to wait and see what actions are taken by them. While they are busy with that, I will try looking into Orochimaru myself. Minato replied gravely. As he noticed the sun illuminating the village in its warm glow, he wished if Konoha could remain this picturesque forever. Sadly, it was just a fleeting thought. You should rest, Minato. I heard from Mikoto that you haven't been at home lately. You will tire yourself out if you keep working continuously. Shikaku said out concern, as he gave his friend a small smile. Looking back at his friend, Minato's shoulders slumped a little as he realized he hadn't stepped in his house for the past 4 days. I look that bad huh? Sighed Minato tiredly. It was a tiring job indeed. The mountains of paperwork, the meetings with officials, the important decisions he generally must make, being a Hokage seemed much simpler to him before he took the position. You can leave some of the work to me at times. I'm your advisor, it's my job to help you after all. And it would be rather troublesome, if our Hokage dies because of stress. Shikaku remarked with his ever-present bored expression. Minato chuckled on hearing that and felt a tad bit lighter. I will take that under consideration. Minato joked as he proceeded to sit in his chair. Despite the current predicament they were in, he couldn't wait to go home and speak to Naruto about his experience on his first mission. He was a father after all, and it was natural for him to be worried about his son. Soon enough Shikaku bid his farewell and left to talk with Ibiki and Yamato regarding the sensitive matter at hand. Namake's compound. It was still early morning, so when Naruto entered the house, he made it a point to be quiet when walking upstairs to his room. Having slept last night for a while, he didn't consider sleeping among his priorities right now. He had already placed all his Umbu gear back at the headquarters and was now clothed in a gray t-shirt, black Umbu pants along with a black kimono on top of it. As he walked to his room, he passed by Mikoto's bedroom and noticed it was slightly cracked open. Glancing through the door for a brief second, a small smile formed on his face as he saw her sleeping form. It made him truly glad to see that his aunt was contently asleep. She was the closest figure he had to a mother. The members of the Umbu, regardless of the village, are expected to always work in the shadows, and thus mistakes on the field are never tolerated. Due to such reasons, every prospective member is made to go through an intensive training program to make them familiarize with the strict methods followed. And, since he had to go through all the protocols in a short period of time, he rarely got any time to come home. Deciding to leave her be, he quietly proceeded to his own room. Soon as he entered, Naruto fell on his bed, enjoying the warmth and softness it provided. It was certainly much better than the rock-hard mattresses that he was given to sleep on, in the Umbu headquarters. Putting his arms below his head, he rested comfortably as his mind wandered off to the events that he witnessed during his mission. It had pained his heart to see the dead corpses of hundreds of shinobi in Amigakure. Despite his young age, he understood what death and love meant. At times, he cursed his own ability to feel other people's emotions to some extent. Having to know and understand such intricate things often tired his young mind. Even with all the power he possessed, Naruto understood that he alone couldn't solve everything. His level of power wasn't enough. He needed to become stronger. From his past experiences, however brief they were, he learned that the shinobi world respected and feared power. If he could augment his power more, the blonde had little doubt that there wasn't anything he couldn't do. Moreover, the large chakra signatures he had felt while crossing the land of rain were certainly disturbing. Some of the chakra he had sensed from there were downright repulsive. Sitting upright, he sighed as his mind went into overdrive. Shaking such thoughts off his mind, he decided to go train for a while. It wouldn't do him any good to sit around idly and dwell on such matters. A few moments later, Naruto now sat cross-legged in a meditative pose in the training ground behind the main house of the Namake's compound. As the seconds gradually ticked, he began hovering over the ground by manipulating the gravity around himself. In the past few months, he barely had any luck in discovering much about the Rinnegan. The only abilities he seemed to know of yet was the gravity manipulation, chakra absorption technique, and the ability to summon various animals. There was so much about his two jujitsu that he still didn't understand. Even after reading the contents of the stone tablet in the Naka shrine, he hadn't gotten any far. Once he reached a height of 15 meters above the ground, he stopped as a thin layer of chakra covered his body. Subsequently, he began extending his sensory abilities in all directions to try and further his range, since his senses only extended up to a radius of 35 miles. His troubled mind calmed down relatively as he began feeling the life force around himself. It was truly beautiful. He remained like that for the next 20 minutes or so when he abruptly fell on the ground. Ow, ow! Cursed Naruto as he nursed his head. Standing up and dusting the little dirt that was on his shirt, he stretched his arms to relieve himself of the slight soreness he felt in his arm. Seems like, I still can't maintain it for too long, thought the blonde dejectedly. However, a few seconds later, his eyes widened ever so slightly when an arbitrary thought crossed his mind. He had never tried to manipulate more than one element at a single time. He wondered if he could try adding the gravity manipulation to any of his jutsus or rather on himself. Upon closing his eyes, he manipulated the gravity around himself to make himself lighter. He smirked as he could barely feel any weight on himself. Even the gravity seals that Jiraiya had placed on him years earlier did not seem to affect him at all. Arching forward slightly, he pushed off from the spot in a blur, creating several cracks on the ground. Although his smirk soon faded when he found himself crash into the wall that stood right in front of him. Well, did not expect that to happen, mused the blonde, rather annoyingly as he once again picked himself from the ground. Well, what do you expect? You only awakened the Rinnegan a few months ago. It's a power unlike anything else. It would certainly take you a good while to a hang of its abilities. Kurama snickered. It was amusing for the fox to see Naruto struggle with something finally. For an entity who had lived for over 2 millennia, even he had never come across someone who was so tuned with chakra. He was certain given some time, his host would far surpass the legends such as Hashirama Senju, Madara Uchiha and perhaps the Rikudo Sennin too. But, at the same time, it alarmed Kurama at how fast Naruto's power increasing. Naruto's own chakra levels would soon surpass his own. Yeah. Laugh it up while you can. Naruto huffed. Yet, he felt a little giddy at the prospect of doing something new. He then began wondering if he could try manipulating 2 or more elements together, to create sub-elements. He had read about several jutsus that combined 2 or more elements together. The most prominent being the Mokuton in the Land of Fire, which combined Suiton and Doton natured chakra. Though, it might be near impossible for him replicate Kekkai Genkai jutsus, he mused it was worth a try. Even the thought of using Senjutsu chakra in conjugation with his normal jutsus or using Senjutsu chakra solely with yin and yang manipulation crossed his mind. But he was also aware that to accomplish such feats he would need years more of practice despite having stupendous chakra control. A smirk framed his face as he realized he knew just the way through which he could get decades worth of training done in relatively 5 or 6 years. He was brought out of his thoughts when he heard someone's footsteps approaching him. Turning around, he was mildly surprised to see Sasuke standing behind him in his training gear, which consisted of dark blue pants, black shinobi sandals and a dark gray-colored t-shirt with the Uchiha clan symbol on the back. Oh, it's you. Naruto commented with a rather bored expression. So, when did you get back? And what was that thing you were trying to do? Sasuke asked as calmly as he could. But, seeing the blonde hover in midair and the speed with which he saw Naruto move had piqued his interest highly. He wondered if it had anything to do with that right eye of his. When he asked the Hokage about Naruto's newly awakened power, he was just told that it's a unique dojutsu which can only be awakened by those who are a direct descendant of the fabled Rikudo Sennin. The fact had left Sasuke dumbfounded, but he found himself to accept the fact that his fellow clansman was special. Huh. I'm surprised as to how much you have changed, Sasuke. Naruto replied with a smile. He could read the Uchiha in front of him like an open book and it warmed him that Sasuke had taken his advice. Well, I have been training myself to the ground every day while you were gone. I have become much stronger, Sasuke stated with air of superiority. Naruto chuckled on seeing that some habits of his hadn't changed at all. He thought about asking him regarding Hinata and the others but stopped himself. He didn't even know if she still thought about him and honestly that thought scared him. But, he reassured himself that staying away from them was the best choice for now. So, do you want to train together? I don't have any missions for a few days and we both could improve greatly. Naruto asked his fellow Uchiha. He hadn't trained with him all that much, but he could feel how much Sasuke had grown since their last spar in the academy. Sasuke simply smirked and settled into his taijutsu stance. 2 years later. An uneasy silence had reigned over the elemental nations in the past 2 years. The only noticeable event that transpired within that period was the start of a civil war in Mizu no Kuni that was initiated by Yagura, the Yondaime Mizukage. Apparently, the peace-loving Mizukage suddenly began butchering people who possessed a Kekii Genkai. The news that traveled around the elemental nations was that Yagura began viewing people with Kekii Genkai as impure and thus began cleansing Mizu no Kuni of their dirt. Fighting against the Mizukage and his loyalists were a large group of resistance which was led by Mei Terumi, an elite jounin of Kirigakure. Kumogakure, despite having little to no interaction with any of the other 4 major villages, only looked to increase their military power, while Iwagakure, who once looked to amass several of their shinobi in Kusagakure and near the borders of Takigakure, had greatly dwindled their forces in those areas. While Kusagakure was now officially a part of Tsuchi no Kuni, there were only a handful of IWA shinobi in that village now. Sunagakure, who were financially troubled in the past due to having less missions, had a new treaty agreement with Konohagakure. According to the agreement between the two nations, 10% of the A-rank or higher class missions given to Konoha would be handed to Sunagakure in exchange for setting up new trade routes within the Wind Nation, and 5% of the profit Kaze no Kuni earned through the sale of gold dust produced by the Yondaime Kazekage. Currently, in the Konoha Academy, Kakashi and Kurenai stood at distance under the shade of a tree as they oversaw several students practicing their elemental manipulation. Over the past 2 years, all the students were made to go through the most basic exercises in elemental manipulation. Based on their chakra nature, the student would either try to burn, damp, crumble, wrinkle, or cut the leaf in half. While most of the students had understood the concept behind the exercise and even learnt to execute it perfectly, there were still some students who lacked adequate chakra control to complete the exercise properly. While it wasn't necessary for a shinobi to use elemental ninjutsu, it was viewed customary for one to at least have the basic manipulation of their chakra natures mastered. "How did your mission go last week, Kurenai?" Kakashi asked casually while his eyes remained glued to the small book on his hand. Ever since Iwagakure's attack on Team Rohan, Konoha had increased Hai no Kuni's border security by having a team of 5 jounin weekly scout the surrounding border near Kusagakure, Takigakure, and the Kiba no Kuni for any threats. It was the same as last month's. No Iwagakure shinobi were spotted. Just a few shinobi from Takigakure, Sunagakure, and several other minor villages who were crossing over for business. If everything goes on smoothly for the next 3 or 4 months, I believe the stress will be slightly relieved. It has been over a year and a half since IWA shinobi made any irregular movements. Kurenai replied with sigh. It had been really tiring for her to go on missions so frequently. Along with her added task of teaching the students in the academy and even some children from major clans, she rarely got any time for herself or with Asuma. It had only been a few months since she started dating her jounin, but she was extremely content with him. I know what you mean. It was surprising to know that Iwagakure did not make any further move against us. I was sure that we would lunge into another war. However, I don't think that Tsuchikage simply backed off without a reason. Kakashi stated speculatively. But he didn't think much on the topic as his eyes fell on Sasuke, who was talking to Hinata. He was visibly pleased with the improvements that all the students had shown the last few years, but he doubted if most of them could handle the extremities of a war between two nations. Despite having more skill than regular academy students, none of them had come across the horrors of a fight apart from Hinata and Sakura. Kurenai, who had become silent for a while, followed the masked ninja's gaze towards Sasuke and Hinata. I wonder what those two might be talking about. Sasuke rarely ever talks to anyone other than Hinata or Sakura. Kurenai said with mild curiosity. Although she might appear to have a cold attitude towards many, she did enjoy the occasional banter and gossip with her friends. I doubt it's anything what you're thinking. Kakashi replied with a raised eyebrow. He was amused by the fact that Kurenai might think along those lines. But he was aware how close the Hyuga girl was to Naruto. He had only spoken to the budding Kunoichi a couple of times, and he had to admit Hinata would look a complete stunner in a few years. Jiraiya-sama would never leave those two alone if anything like that happens. Thought Kakashi with a perverted giggle. Suddenly he found himself ducking, as his eyes traveled to Kurenai, and from the looks of her he wondered if she somehow read his mind. You damn pervert. And you accuse me of saying such things. One day I would love to burn that Ika books of yours. I don't understand why men reach such smut. Kurenai seethed with narrowed eyes. Hey. Calm down, would you? Look, everyone is looking at you. Kakashi commented with an amused chuckle. Upon quickly noticing that several students were now staring at her, she had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. She sent a glare towards her fellow jounin for putting her in such a position. Meanwhile, Kakashi still hadn't moved his lone eye from his book. Kurenai just huffed slightly, turned to look the other way, pretending to ignore everything that had happened just now. Man, this is such a drag. I'd rather be laying down somewhere under the sun. Shikamaru expressed his thoughts with a lazy yawn. He was holding 2 leaves in each of his hand which showed signs of burn. Slumping down on the ground, he once again yawned lazily and kept his arms on the ground behind himself for support. Following his lead, several of students rested on the ground after keeping at the elemental manipulation for almost 2 hours now. I just don't get it why the Hokage had to increase the graduation age just to give us more training. It just seems like a bother. I'd rather be training in my clan's jutsu. Kiba yelled, scratching his hair. Choji seemed to agree with the Ninken user as he gave a slight nod. Despite having learnt the basic manipulation for his chakra nature, everyone was made to the same exercises repeatedly. And the fact that he hadn't eaten anything in over 2 hours was beginning to make him feel extremely hungry. He never really could think straight on an empty stomach. There could be a number of reasons for such measures. The one which makes the most sense to me is that Hokage-sama wants the new generation of shinobi to be prepared for something in the future. Shino added tactfully. Like many others, he too had wondered about the Hokage's decision, and upon inquiring with his father, who was rather close to the yondaime, that was the only conclusion he could come upon. Also, it would make sense that they did not have the clear picture because, most of the vital information is only given to Chunin or higher class shinobi. Sasuke, Hinata and Sakura, who were sitting a little farther away from Shikamaru, Kiba and Shino, had overheard their conversation. While Sasuke knew to some extent regarding the reason behind their extraneous training, he knew it wasn't his place to reveal anything. He suspected Hinata might know a little, but he wasn't too sure about Sakura. While the girl was smart and somewhat better than most kunoichi, she did not seem mentally strong. At least that's what he thought. But tried never to judge the girl just on her appearances. Idiots. They are just wasting their time talking about that. We will not be told of anything until we become genin anyway. Sasuke stated calmly. Well, not everyone is as smart as you, Sasuke-kun, retorted the pink-haired girl. She giggled lightly on seeing Sasuke grunt but did not push him any further. Hinata sighed, seeing the mood between her 2 friends. She was content with how things were progressing in her life. But still she could never feel complete. She knew the reason, of course, but always suppressed any thoughts or feelings about him. She had come to terms with the fact that whatever relation she had with him in the past would never be the same if she did ever see him again. She just didn't know how soon it would be that she'd see her. Hey, who do you think our sensei will be? We have already been assigned our teams and only 2 years are left for us to graduate. Chirped Sakura. Sasuke quirked an eyebrow at the girl's excited behavior. Well, it wouldn't really matter. I have heard Kakashi, Asuma, Kurenai, and Guy are all considered powerful shinobi. So long as we get strong, that's all that matters. Sasuke replied. After his frequent training sessions with Naruto, he could feel that he had grown immensely, whether be it his physical strength or his chakra. He had even learned a few Katan jutsus from Itachi and some Raitun ones from Naruto. But the most prominent improvement was his Sharingan. He could now use it for long periods of time without tiring himself, and the drain on his chakra felt negligible. Moreover, he wanted to get strong enough to kill Danzo. The hatred he felt inside himself for that man had only increased since that night. You're no fun, Sasuke-kun. You don't have to seem angry all the time. Sakura joked. Sasuke merely avoided the statement and got up to get back to training. After about 4 hours, when the academy had ended for the day, Mizuki walked into the classroom Irika was sitting in and handed him a file. Hokage-sama has sent this file that contains the information about the location of the next training exercises the students will be taken to. He said lazily. Irika eagerly took the file and quickly scanned through the contents. Thanks, Mizuki. I was waiting for this. Replied Irika kindly. 1 week later. A shinobi dressed in black full-sleeved jumper and black gloves with gray flak jacket over it jumped from the branch of one tree to another without giving himself a break. His blonde hair flapped slightly every time he jumped. Currently, the washi-masked Umbu was on his way to check out a small town bordering near the land of hot springs. There were reports which stated the appearance of several hostile Kirigakure shinobi who supported the yondaime Mizukage. Apparently, the Kiri shinobi had been terrorizing the people of the town by stealing their resources, money, and even blowing up parts of the town if the people refused. Since the town had little to no ninja populace, they had hastily sent out a request to Konoha for aid. His orders were to eliminate all the people responsible for creating this mess and bring their heads back to Konoha as proof of success. Even with the mask on, one could say that the blonde had a serious look on his face. As he quickly began covering more ground, his mind drifted back to the past 2 years. He was saddened when he heard that Shisui retired from the Umbu and now held the rank of an elite jounin within the village. Konoha had also stabilized itself from the attempted coup d'etat over 2 years ago and had a fair amount of well-trained shinobi on the field. It certainly wouldn't bode well for the village or Hai no Kuni if Konoha began declining missions. From what he had heard from Shisui, he was mainly helping out Mikoto in political affairs and with the duties of Uchiha clan head. There were honestly way too much paperwork. Even apart from that, Shisui and Itachi rarely stayed in the village due to the number of high-ranking missions they were assigned. Despite Team Rho losing a valuable member, they had completed all their assigned mission with 100% success. However, there were instances where individual members of the team were sent to get the job done discreetly. In the past 2 years, Naruto had grown tremendously, both in terms of power and height. Due to the intense training that Naruto always immersed himself in, his body had grown to a good height of 5 feet and even developed lean muscles. He was glad that he wasn't the shortest member in his team anymore. He was frankly tired of all the midget jokes that many in the Umbu cracked. Despite all the banter, everyone in the Umbu had come to respect him for his own power rather than just viewing him as the Hokage's son. He didn't really mind it all that much, but there were times when he found himself irked at that. But, it wasn't something that he couldn't handle. After a few more hours of traveling, he came upon a hill from where he could overlook the small town. From what he had roughly heard, the town comprised of several multi-floored buildings for businesses, residential houses, and a few parks for children here and there. But looking at it now, he was surprised to see that at least half the town seemed destroyed with rubble from the broken-down buildings scattered all around. He assumed that those were from explosion tags since ninja wouldn't need to use excessive force against civilians. Crouching down, he touched the ground with one of his fingers and then stood up. Should be easy enough. These Kiri shinobi seemed to be few in numbers. Naruto said to himself as he thought of a quick plan to kill all of them. He then proceeded to jump from atop the hill and made it straight towards the location of the Yagura loyalists. He quickly ran towards the town and jumped over the wall surrounding it discreetly. Taking to the rooftops for added cover, he made his way towards the tallest building in the middle of the town. As his eyes now laid on the building, he found himself appreciating the beauty of the building. The building was 4 stories tall and demonstrated a shoin style which stated it belonged to an aristocrat. He also had to admit he was relatively impressed with how the Kiri shinobi were handling the people in this town. It was a little after 2 in the noon and the people in the street went about their daily business as it were a normal day. He then realized that the shinobi must have casted a genjutsu over the population to make them look the other way. Considering that only about a couple hundred lived in this town, it was certainly possible. A few seconds later he was now standing on the rooftop of building where his targets were. So, all it took was 6 shinobi to capture a small town of civilians. Naruto thought with a sigh. He had lost count of how many such missions he had already come to. Over the past 2 years, he had protected and assassinated numerous ministers, shinobi, businessmen, all for the sake of Konoha. There were times when he wondered if what he was doing was right or not. People have different idea behind the term peace or freedom. While to some it may seem that he's protecting his home, to the others he was just a butcher. These Kiri shinobi might not be here in this town right now, if there wasn't a civil war going in Mizu no Kuni. There wouldn't be animosity between Iwagakure or Konohagakure or between any other for that if not for the past 3 shinobi wars. Eventually, even the notion whether shinobi should exist or not crossed his mind. But he never thought about the matter deeper. He was born a shinobi and he doubted if he could give up what he is. Despite all the countless conundrums that always plagued his mind, he knew he would do anything to see his precious home safe. Deciding to take the direct route, Naruto landed a strong punch on the floor, causing it break and fall onto the floor. He could hear the shinobi inside regaining their senses upon the untimely collapse of the roof and get into position to apprehend the perpetrator. As the dust from the rubble settled down, Naruto jumped into the middle of the group who were too shocked to see a young boy. "What the hell is this?" "A kid?" yelled a tall brown-haired man. He wore dark blue pants, white shirt and a light gray jacket on top. But probably the most prominent feature about the man were the large talisman that hung from his ears. He had his katana gripped in his hand tightly, ready to attack at a moment's notice. "Konoha must have grown weak if they have young kids in the Umbu now," stated another man tauntingly with an average build. He had light blue hair and a large scar under his left eye which reached till his chin. Seeing as how everyone had taken a step back, Naruto assumed this man was the apparent leader of this group. "I really don't have time for people like you," Naruto said under his breath with a sigh. Soon as the man took another step forward, Naruto lunged towards the blue-haired man in the blink of an eye and severed his head, and his body fell onto the ground limply. Another shinobi wearing a mask over his face ran through hand seals quickly, the moment he saw the blonde-haired kid go towards his friend. "Suetun, Sueho no Jutsu," said the man as he spit a powerful beam of boiling water towards the enemy. The other members of the group quickly got behind their masked comrade as the jutsu collided with the umbu. The masked shinobi smirked, knowing that at such close distance, it would be impossible for the shinobi to dodge and would end up dead. However, everyone's eyes widened dramatically when they saw the blonde kid standing in his spot unharmed. He is absorbing the chakra in that jutsu into himself," spoke an aged black-haired man baffled at the scene before him. Never in his entire shinobi career had he seen someone with such an ability. "Such a pitiful jutsu," Naruto remarked flatly. He could have finished off everyone before they even knew it, but he wanted to see how strong these people were. He too had heard the news of the civil war that started in Mizu no Kuni. While he certainly didn't share the same views as the Yondaime Mizukage, he was a little interested as to what sort of shinobi worked under the men. And he had little doubt that the Mizukage would send weak shinobi to another nation. Seeing as how the blonde was simply standing his ground, one of them fired several kunai towards Naruto, who deftly dodged each one of them with little effort. He then proceeded to take out his own kunai and with unbelievable speed threw it back at him, killing the man instantly. However, Naruto quickly had to jump back to avoid a sword swing aimed at his neck. "Amaterasu," Naruto whispered as the man who attacked him with the sword became ablaze with black flames. The shinobi screamed in pain as slowly the flesh began melting off his body. Upon seeing the horrid sight, the other three shinobi fearfully took a step backward as they realized who the blonde kid was. The rumors of shinobi killing off his targets with inextinguishable black flames had reached to every corner of the elemental nations within the last year. Kuro sure, Black Death," whispered the blue-haired as the gravity of the situation finally fell upon him. The other shinobi glanced at their comrade as sweat began forming on the side of their faces. They too had heard about the Kuro sure of Konoha, and if the rumors of his strength were anywhere near correct, they knew this was a fight they could not win. "Oh, you know of me then?" Naruto stated impassively while the look on his face was borderline boredom. Taking the momentary lapse of concentration from the three shinobi, Naruto gripped his chikudo again firmly and dispatched all three of them. Shaking the blood off his chikudo, he sheathed it back on his waist. Taking out a sealing scroll from his waist pouch, he sealed all 6 of the heads within the seal and then proceeded to jump onto the rooftop. Time to remove everyone from the genjutsu, Naruto thought as a large wave of chakra pulsed off him which blanketed the entire town. Immediately the people were jerked off what they were doing and began looking at each other frantically. One of the civilians noticed the Konoha Umbu on top of the building and yelled with a large smile on his face. "Look, Konoha has sent help. We are saved." Noticing that everyone was back to normal, Naruto shunshined from the building to outside the town. He never really liked being the center of attention. Deciding to get done with the mission, he turned around and began making his way back to Konoha. Meanwhile in Amigakure, in a dark underground cave, stood 3 people and 6 astral figures. All these people were S-rank missing ninja from various villages. Despite having conflicting personalities and aspirations, they were huddled together here to receive their latest order from their leader. The only common attribute among all of them was the high-collared black cloaks with red clouds, which was worn by all. Another figure with a spiral orange mask stood a little above who looked at the 6 astral figures with a bored expression behind his mask. "We have collected enough resources for the commencement of our plan. Now, I want each one of you head out and look for your respected targets. Your only task is to find and observe the Jinchuriki until further orders. We are still not ready to seal the bijou within the statue yet. However, if you are to find the target isolated, only then must each team go for the capture," stated an orange-haired man authoritatively with several black piercings around his nose and ears. Even in the darkness his silver-colored rippling eyes glowed brightly, emphasizing the power held by the man. "So, it finally starts. It should be fun," smirked a man with a distinctive shark-like appearance. He had a very tall and muscular physique with pale and light blue skin. He had small, round white eyes and sharp triangular teeth with 3 sets of curved facial marking under his eyes, which looked akin to gills. His forehead adorned the symbol of Kirigakure with a slash mark across it, signifying his defection from the village. He also wore a ring on his left ring finger which had the kanji for south. It's about time, yeah. I am getting bored with collecting these pesky bounties, yelled another man confidently with long blonde hair, half of which was tied in a ponytail with the rest hanging down freely. You all have been given your targets. Now, leave to look for the Jinchuriki immediately, ordered the orange-haired man. Hi, Pain-sama. Everyone in the group nodded their head in accordance before seemingly disappear from the cave. The man called Pain glanced upward before the orange-masked ninja jumped down and walked towards him. Madara, what do you want? Asked Pain, coldly. We need to talk about the Kyubi Jinchuriki. After completing his assigned task, Naruto had immediately left the small town and steadily made his way back to Konoha. Knowing that he would be free for a few days after he gave his report, he was in no rush to reach home. Hence, he had decided to take a rather slow pace on his way back. It had been a little over 4 hours since he was on the road and it was relatively peaceful for the blonde. He rarely got any time for himself amidst all the missions he was sent on. But he never complained about any of that. He loved his village far too much and loved serving his country. Despite his love for Konoha and the Land of Fire, he couldn't ignore the slight distant feeling in his heart. Having traveled to several different parts of the elemental nations since he joined the Umbu, the amount of sorrow, misery, and hatred he had come across, it was truly terrifying. It had changed him in ways he himself couldn't describe. He earnestly wished for all the conflicts between the 5 villages to subside. But, since the dawn of the shinobi, peace always seemed like an impossibility among them. As he was walking in the dense forests of Hai no Kuni in the late evening, a sudden gust of wind suddenly hit him, and he came to an abrupt halt. He casually looked around, as if looking for someone. While his face still portrayed an impassive look, his mind was highly alert of his surroundings. It was very subtle, but he had felt the extremely potent chakra, even if it was for a second. He took a step forward but noticed a strangeness in the wind and trees around him. It's as if time itself has frozen. But, somehow it doesn't seem to affect me. Naruto thought cautiously. He was familiar with Jakuken ninjutsu, but he had never heard or come across anything such as this. He flared his chakra, but nothing seemed to happen. Trying it for a few more times, he eventually settled down and looked to his right. From here he had felt the chakra. You may as well show yourself. It's no point hiding. I know you're here. Naruto called out, seemingly to no one. There was no response for a few minutes before he suddenly turned around and jumped back. He saw a strange-looking pale-skinned man. He had medium-sized light-colored unkempt hair which he wore in a ponytail. He wore a long-sleeved, light-colored suit with a sectioned apron over it, along with a sash. But the most mind-boggling feature Naruto noticed were the horns that grew from the back of his head that covered his forehead along with the red-colored rinnegan in both his eyes. Naruto eyed the man warily, having already sensed the immense power that the man held. He was sure, even if he gave his all, this was a fight he wouldn't win. His own chakra reserves felt like a droplet of water compared to the man's endless ocean of chakra. I must say that I'm impressed, young Otsutsuki Prince, announced the man with a weak smile. Naruto's eyes significantly widened on hearing the name Otsutsuki but remained calm nonetheless. Otsutsuki? Naruto questioned with a raised eyebrow. By now he had realized, there wasn't much he could do to get out of this Jakuken ninjutsu either. He wasn't ever sure if it was ninjutsu to begin with. With his rinnegan he could see that the flow of time itself had stopped and it baffled him completely. He couldn't even speak to Kurama for that matter. And the fact that the man before him called him the Otsutsuki Prince confused him greatly. His knowledge about the Otsutsuki clan was very scarce and in fact whatever he knew about them, he had learned that from Kurama. I'm not surprised that you don't know about us, young Naruto. It has rather been some time since our clan has associated with any beings from this dimension, replied the man formally, his words intriguing the blonde greatly. And who might you be? Asked Naruto flatly. The man chuckled seeing the expression on the young boy's face. I am one who stands above everyone else. But if you insist, you may call me Takashiki Otsutsuki. The man said, quite humbly. That's ridiculous, it shouldn't be possible. The Otsutsuki clan lived millennials ago. And why do you call me the Otsutsuki Prince? Asked Naruto speculatively. As the seconds passed, none of them spoke a word. Soon enough, Takashiki walked forward from under the tree, as he now stood under the clearing of the evening sky. Millennials? What you humans call time is a momentary speck in the infinite space and time. The laws that govern time are different depending on where you put yourself. As for your question, the members of the Otsutsuki clan have ways of prolonging their lives, while some of them are born with such high regeneration abilities that they are essentially immortal. We have laws in place that govern the existence of our species. Now, tell me what you know about the Otsutsuki clan. Surely, the fox must have told you something by now. Takashiki said, his voice signifying his seriousness. Naruto widened his eyes significantly at that little piece of information. I'm not here to harm you, Naruto. You surely must realize that by now. If I wanted you dead, you would already be dead by now. Although, I generally refrain from such actions. He emphasized when he sensed the hesitance in the young boy's demeanor. I don't understand. What does the Otsutsuki clan have to do anything with the matters of shinobi? Naruto queried in confusion, losing his calm exterior. Takashiki sighed at the young boy's dilemma but decided to be patient and explain everything to Naruto. It certainly wouldn't do him any good if he couldn't even see to the survival of his own descendant. Do you know what the moon and sun symbol on your hands mean? Asked Takashiki. From what I understand, it represents the yin and yang half of my chakra. But... Naruto stopped mid-sentence when he saw the elderly man put his hand up as if to stop him from talking. That was when he noticed the same symbols on the man's hands too. Yet again he couldn't keep the shock from being displayed on his face. You are partially correct. Although, essentially the moon and the sun symbol on your hands represents the fact that you are a member of the Otsutsuki clan's main family. There are very few of us left. Answered Takashiki Otsutsuki with a hint of sorrow in his voice. The fact was that Takashiki was the last member of the Otsutsuki's main family left other than Naruto and Minato. Naruto noticed the tone the elderly man took but did not interrupt him, his own curiosity about the ancient clan multiplying. You are a descendant of Kagaya Otsutsuki. The main family of our clan resides in a different spacetime compared to your world, and we search around the different dimensions for the Shinju that was scattered in the beginning. Our clan has existed since the beginning of time and space itself. Explained the elderly Otsutsuki as clearly as he could. Meanwhile, Naruto listened to the man before him with a relatively calm expression now as he understood the meaning behind his words. So, why show yourself now? From what little history I know, the only people with the Otsutsuki name to have lived in this world are Kagaya, Hagoromo, Hamura, Indra and Ashura. I'm aware that I'm a direct descendant of Kagaya Otsutsuki. And that Hagoromo and Hamura battled the Jubi and Kagaya, eventually sealing her away in the moon. That's all I know. Naruto stated earnestly. Takashiki nodded his head, already having figured out the extent of the young boy's knowledge. There are dark forces working in the shadows, young prince. For the survival of your family as well as that of our clan, you need to be prepared. You are the only one who can stop them. Chakra was never meant to be shared with anyone other than the members of our clan. But that all changed when Kagaya appeared in this world. The main house of our clan has been divided for quite some time now, and there are factions that believe the knowledge of chakra should remain within the Otsutsuki clan, at all costs. In time, there will be people who will be coming to this world seeking for you. You must be ready for that time. Revealed Takashiki, further surprising Naruto. The blonde barely uttered a word even after Takashiki had finished speaking. It all sounded so unbelievable to him that he really did not know what to say. But judging from the man's attitude, Naruto knew that he wasn't being deceitful. Furthermore, if what he heard was right, then the shinobi world would soon fall into a greater danger. And based on the overwhelming power he sensed from the man earlier, he wondered if he could ever hope to reach that level. But there was one thing, he knew for sure. He wouldn't let anyone lay a hand on his precious people. Takashiki noticed a sudden change in the young boy's eyes and wondered if this was what emotion was. He was never too good at expressing those himself. Humans, such an interesting species, so fickle yet they have so much potential. I'm beginning to understand why Kagaya came to this world. Thought Takashiki interestingly. I still don't quite understand why you've decided to show yourself before me. Why would you wish to help me? Naruto questioned yet again, looking at the man before him firmly. Seconds ticked away, but he received no answer. Suddenly the images of three men standing atop a mountain flashed through his mind and his eyes widened, ever so slightly. For the past 2 years, disturbing visions of three people surrounded by death and chaos always barged into his dreams. He never spoke of them to anyone but knew it wasn't just a mere occurrence that he began having such visions since his Rinnegan awakened. Does it have anything to do with the visions I have been having regularly? Asked Naruto, hoping to get some sort of answer. Lately he had began having feelings that he didn't know himself all too well. In time, you shall learn the entire truth, young prince. Those eyes of yours will witness a great deal of grief as your power grows, and it will be your choices that will bring about either life or death around yourself. You still have a lot to learn. The future has untold possibilities, but out of the countless ones lies only one right path, stated Takashiki sagely. Before Naruto could say anything further, he saw the man turning around and walk in the opposite direction as his body began to fade. We shall meet again, young Naruto. Heed my words carefully. Were the last words Naruto heard before Takashiki completely faded out of his sight. He noticed that the surrounding around him had returned to normal and for a second wondered whether everything that had transpired was a dream or not. It was just so much of information to take in. His young mind wasn't prepared to handle the gravity of all of this, but he tried his best to keep himself composed. From all his years of training he had learned that nothing could ever be accomplished with a troubled mind. He somberly looked up at the moon in the night sky and wondered why his life must be so hard. All he ever wanted was to live peacefully with his family. Alas, he knew that was only a wishful thinking. I will have to look into this matter myself, the Otsutsuki clan huh? Naruto whispered as the words simply drifted along the wind in the forest. Shaking his head slightly, he once again turned around and began making his way back to Konoha. Based on what he heard, he realized there wasn't any immediate danger to Konoha from the Otsutsuki clan. Even so, the matter couldn't be just left alone. Chakra, which is the fundamental source of power in the shinobi world today, had after all originated from the Otsutsuki clan. Or that's what he believed. He couldn't even begin to fathom how strong the clan would be. And learning that the Otsutsuki are encased in an internal conflict doesn't really help him all that much. Despite being highly suspicious of the person who greeted him earlier, he was relieved that the conversation did not escalate to any fighting. Deep within Naruto's seal, Kurama lay on the ground with a somewhat speculative look on his face. He wasn't certain as to what transpired in the last 10 minutes, but he was sure Naruto was approached by someone questionable. There weren't many things that alarmed the age-old Bijou, but this incident certainly put him on guard. Emige Cure. What about the Kyuubi Jinchuriki? Asked Pain with a straight face. Orochimaru is planning to attack the Kyuubi brat with Danzo Shimura and Iwagakure's aid within the span of next 2 months. I had Zetsu keep an eye out on Orochimaru after he betrayed Akatsuki. Also, there's been some disturbing news that has been traveling around the elemental nations regarding the Kyuubi's host. Replied Madara. The purple-haired woman standing beside Pain narrowed her eyes slightly at the masked man before her. She never truly trusted the intentions of the man and found it hard to believe his claim of being Madara. But, she never voiced her opinion in front of him. She subtly glanced towards Pain, unnoticed by the masked shinobi. There's no need to worry about the Kyuubi yet. Even right now, the Geto Mazo isn't ready for the sealing of the Bijus. And the Kyuubi must be sealed at the end. Replied the orange-haired man stoically. Pain very well knew about the identity of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki Naruto Namikaze, son of Yondaime Hokage. I hope this won't be sentimental for you. The fact that the boy is your grandson is of no consequence to me or my group. Emphasized Pain. Madara narrowed his eyes behind mask but immediately relaxed his features. Not at all. I was merely going to suggest sending Kisame to observe the battle. I have no doubt that Konoha will come out on top in the little skirmish Orochimaru constructed. Naruto is a rather interesting person if I must say so. Mused Madara as he folded his arms over his chest. Oh. What are your thoughts of him then? Questioned Pain rather keenly. He had awakened the Rinnegan in his right eye 2 years ago when Danzo fled the village. And his power has grown tremendously ever since. And the Yondaime Hokage's power is no joke either. I dare say, the two might be a match for you too. Madara stated with a smirk, knowing full well of the reaction he might get. However, he was slightly surprised by the lack of reaction. Yet, Pain as well as Konan were highly intrigued by the revelation. He was told by Jiraiya long ago that the Rinnegan only manifested itself during time of great chaos and was only awakened by the Rikudo Sennin before. He also wondered if there was a relation between him and Naruto but did not let his mind think much into the matter. He would make sure to build a world of peace and go through any obstacle to see his plans become reality. He was after all a god. Is that so? He too shall know pain when the time comes. The elemental nations has danced on the idiotic whims of 5 great villages for far too long. Naruto Namikaze, Jiraiya and the Yondaime Hokage are just another shinobi who shall be dealt with when the time comes. In the meantime, you and Kisame should keep an eye on the Kyuubi. I shall very well like to know how strong the Kyuubi Jinchuriki's Rinnegan is. Pain replied with an air of finality before he and Conan walked off, leaving Madara all alone. Just when the two were out of sight and hearing range, Zetsu rose from the ground beside the orange-masked shinobi. I didn't think you were going to tell him about Naruto's Rinnegan at all, but why didn't you tell him everything about the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, stated the black half of Zetsu, followed by his white counterpart. Considering how strong the boy has become, he could become a threat to my plans. But I have seen how strong his emotions are. I'm sure Naruto himself has sensed the darkness that lies within him. It was a shame that I couldn't get Itachi to join our little group. If I can get Naruto to join me, there would be no one strong enough to oppose me. But it's still quite a few years before I can even approach Naruto with my offer. However, there's also young Sasuke. He is a different story altogether. I wonder how he'll take the news about the truth of Uchiha massacre. Mused Madara. He had kept a close watch on Konoha since his failed attempt to kill the Yondaime Hokage 12 years ago. He had to commend the fact that Konoha had some interesting students in the academy, but none of them caught his attention like Naruto and Sasuke. It will be easier said than done. So long as he is surrounded by the likes of Yondaime Hokage, Jiraiya, Shisui, and Itachi, he will be hard to capture even if the whole Akatsuki were to go after him. Despite that too, his Rinnegan is powerful. Much more powerful than Nagato's. Warned the black half of Zetsu. I have plans for them too. That is, if Orochimaru doesn't get to them first. His obsession with the Sharingan is unhealthy, to say the least. Once we capture the other Bijus, or at least half of them, we can move on to the Kyuubi then. In the meantime, I want you to keep an eye on Anoki and Orochimaru's movement. The moment they make a move on Takigakure, I want you to inform me. I wouldn't want to miss the show after all. Madara replied in an authoritative voice. Zetsu simply nodded and sank back into the ground to follow the wishes of his master. Time to see how my little pet Inkiri is handling the business. Thought Madara before swirling away into the vortex originating from the eye hole in his orange mask. A few weeks later. It was almost 8 in the evening and most of Konoha was still busy with their daily works. The streets were filled with people as the village was covered in a relatively cooler weather. Over the past couple of weeks, winter had slowly begun to roll its way to the land of fire. Since the Fire Nation is in the middle of the elemental nations, the summer was quite hot in these lands. Although the summer wasn't as bad compared to Kaze no Kuni's, it was still hard for a regular person to stand directly under the sun for more than a few hours. The arrival of winter meant a busier schedule for the populace of Konoha due to increase in tourists as well as mission demands. At the edge of the Hokage monument, Naruto sat quietly as his eyes gazed at the glistening sky filled with countless mysteries. Over the past years, Naruto had made it sort of a habit to spend some of his free time on top of the Shodai Hokage's stone face and simply observe his friends train during the morning while in the academy. Those were the times when he most wished if he was a normal kid, maybe then, he too would be in the company of his friends. He wasn't delusional enough to cling to those thoughts or wishes for comfort, but he had been rather stressed over the past few weeks. His meeting with the man named Takashiki Otsutsuki had pushed his mind into a frenzy of questions, to which he had no answer. He did not even know where to start looking for them. He had decided to discuss the matter with his father once both Jiraiya and Itachi were in the village and thus hadn't told anyone else about it. Naruto knew he could discuss this matter with his father alone too, but considering the amount of work he has been under lately, he figured it could wait. He was certain Jiraiya's experience and in-depth knowledge about the elemental nations would be an immense help in gathering information about the Otsutsuki clan. However, since both Jiraiya and Itachi were away from the village, he had to wait until their return. As his eyes lingered towards the moon, once again he found himself wondering about his friends in the academy. It had been a little over 2 years since he had spoken to any one of them except Sasuke. His heart pained a little as he thought about Hinata and Sakura. Those two were the first in his age group to accept him as a friend and understand him. He chuckled dryly as he realized how he had broken their trust. Some friend I am, thought Naruto. But, he also knew it was for their own good. Considering his past, he never wanted to put his friend's life in danger just because of him. He wanted them to become stronger, so that they could defend themselves in Konoha in the face of powerful enemies. Once again, his eyes looked over the peaceful village and saw the illusion that most of the villagers were under. All the great villages were at odds with each other and the temporary peace which had reigned over the elemental nations since the last shinobi war looked more fragile with every passing day. Naruto was certain a storm was heading their way soon enough, one that would bring about a revolution in the elemental nations. Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha created this village with the hope to shelter the young kids from war, to stop the unnecessary bloodshed. But, in the end all it did was give rise to more wars. I wonder what they might have to say looking at the current shinobi world. Naruto muttered to himself. Madara lived for the thrill of battle. I doubt whether he would be surprised. From what I know, it's the same with most of the Uchihas. All of them seem crazy to me. Kurama snickered. A small smile formed on Naruto's face hearing Kurama's words. Well, maybe I should arrange you a reunion with him? Naruto questioned tauntingly. I will rip that Uchiha to shreds if I ever see him again. Retorted Kurama loudly as his massive tails swung wildly behind him. Naruto smirked when he heard the irritation within his friend's voice. It amused him to know that even after so many decades, the animosity Kurama held for his grandfather hadn't dwindled even a bit. Then again, he mused would be quite mad too if someone made him act against his own will. I doubt you will. Naruto said to his partner telepathically. And the ironic part was that Kurama knew that fact very well. Even if he wanted to kill that despicable man, he couldn't. Not unless he wished to make Naruto furious. There were times when Kurama too was confused by Naruto's line of thoughts. He had noticed as Naruto grew up, his curiosity and questions regarding the shinobi world only grew more complex with no one to provide him an answer for. You should talk to them sometime, Naruto. You've been working a lot in Umbu the past couple of years. Kurama stated. Yet again, Naruto's face became quite soft upon hearing those words. But, he did it all for the sake of his friends. His hands were stained in blood while his friends were as innocent as the day they all were born. And he wanted to keep it that for as long as he could. No one knew the burden that he carried on himself and no one could even begin to understand the responsibility he felt towards his village, his country. It was because he was willing to protect from the shadows so that his friends could bask in the light when the time comes. When the time's right, my old friend. Whispered the blonde shinobi to his partner. Deciding to go home and rest for a while, Naruto got up from the edge and began making his way through the forests at the back of the Hokage monument. Unknown to him, a small white snake followed his every footstep from the shadows. A month and a half later. A lone shinobi stood before a large waterfall, with his face covered under a white hood. On the other side of the waterfall, stood the proud village of Takigakure, home to the Jinchuriki of Nanabai. It was early into the dawn and most of the people were still asleep in their bed peacefully ignorant of the danger lurking right on their doorsteps. The time has come, for all of it to end, whispered the man as he brought forth his hands and placed his palms together, thereby calling out the name of his jutsu menacingly. Kuchiyo's Edo Tensei no Jutsu. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.